Welcome to Under the Rug at Work, where I shine light on things that are normally swept under the rug. Today, I'm chatting with Peter Barron about psychosocial hazards. Peter is an assistant state inspector with SafeWork New South Wales in the psychosocial team, so perfect to talk to us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Peter.
Thanks for the invite, Nicole.
You're welcome. Can you tell us about your background and experience and what got you here today?
In terms of background, there's been a lot of bad golf played over the years, including the weekend. Probably more relevant to the listeners. I've got an honours degree in psychology and went into rehab counselling, which was, helping people that had been injured at work. And this it's been a really nice career progression. So then I went into North Coast TAFE for 12 years as safety welfare manager and took the opportunity to jump over here. So I was a generalist inspector and a district manager, and really covered everything in the country areas, which gave me a great exposure to different workplaces and different issues. And then a couple of years back, moved into the psychosocial skills area to get those skills going again. So it's been a really nice transition to move through from dealing with people that have already been hurt to try support businesses to prevent them from being harmed.
And is that the reason you went for the role at Safe Work and also for the career, a slight change?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I really like working in careers where there's sort of a social element to it in terms of trying to help society and make life better for us all.
Mm, I'm with you. And as they all say, prevention is better than cure. So if we
Mm,
can prevent it, that we were just chatting earlier about how we'd love to do ourselves out of a job.
yes, it's a strange career goal to make sure you don't, but I don't think it's going to be a successful one. But it's what we all aim for, that everyone goes home in the same shape they went to work in.
Yes, it's a good vision. And look, New South Wales, I'm from New South Wales, you're from New South Wales, so we love it. But they were also the first to develop the code of practice for managing psychosocial hazards. Can you tell us what inspired its creation?
Hmm. I think there was a variety of triggers, but we'd really seen and heard from businesses that they were struggling with how to manage such risks and such hazards. And the workers' comp stats that sat behind that as well really showed that the average claim is a lot higher than a physical claim. So we really wanted to develop something that was really going to support businesses and really improve the safety and welfare for everybody out there. And that's been really well backed up by the changes to the work health safety regs in 2022. So that's been really handy, and it's really garnered a lot more interest from businesses, and really highlighted what people should be doing to actually make sure that it's not just the physical welfare you're looking after, it's the other side as well. And so many stories we hear, good things and bad things, and if we can manage this, it's a really good outcome for everybody.
Yeah.
Mm,
And most people and organizations, they want to do the right thing. They want to have a great workplace. They want to have a team where they belong and they feel safe. It's the how that gets us tripped up. And often,
mm,
if it's things like workload or stress or, even outside of work, that means that we are less civil with each other and one of many psychosocial hazards. So,
mm.
helping people by providing the tools and the proper understanding on how to resolve issues, how to identify them, how to review them, is a really great way to go. And that's what the code of practice tries to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's we refer to it as our Bible. So there was a lot of consultation with industry that helped with putting that together. I always love highlighting these 10 case studies at the back of it,
Yeah.
and it's across different industries. But it really helps with painting a picture on how you can approach these items. In terms of the work health safety regs, you've got basically a step-by-step process that's laid out in 55C and D of
Mhm.
the regs. So even if you're from interstate or overseas, it's still a good way to look at how you can actually map your way through how to identify and assess psychosocial hazards. So it's a big push through there, but we get really good feedback about the case studies at the back. It does cover situations where you might have more than one risk.
Mhm.
And every study basically around the world is showing if you've got more than one psychosocial hazard, it really increases the likelihood of there being harm done, and it costing businesses, financially and personally as well.
And look, if you've got people in your organization, you've got more than one psychosocial risk.
Yeah, we look at the data, and it used to say that 1 in 5 people would have mental health issues over the years. And now there seems to be more saying now it might be even be 1 in 4. So basically, if you've got 20 people in your business, that's 4 or 5 that might have a possible mental health issue over the years. And you compare that to having someone with a back injury, you should still be working around that.
Yeah.
It's if you sort of close your eyes and ignore it, that's where you can get the troubles from that side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, I'd question that stat as well, because I don't think anyone has gotten over the last 3 years, 4 years without having an off day.
Oh yeah.
Being, completely mentally healthy. We've gone through some incredible change and some incredible world events, and we've even got, cost of living crisis and things that are happening, wars and things that are happening now. So yeah, to that stat, I think would change daily, but we need to reduce the stigma, and I think this helps to do that, and this conversation helps to do that as well. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I think that's a really good insight. The best thing we can really promote out there is for businesses to create a safe environment.
Mm.
Everyone has a good understanding of what that looks like physically, so we're really trying to spread the word and provide more resources. There'll be more coming as well soon, to just to make it look a little bit easier from that side, because it's really good business sense, and it's a really good thing to do as a person, to be looking after your staff,
Yeah.
and really managing that effectively.
Definitely. And on that point, uh, people and organizations are trying to assess psychosocial risks the same way as they do physical risks.
Mm.
What's the best way to approach them? Is this the right thing to do?
Yeah, that's sort of a hard. It's going to vary from situation to situation, is a good way to describe it. We do like to see businesses embed the psychological risk management in with the same systems that they use. The studies are really showing that if they've got something to basically hang it on, it helps with it being integrated. So it's the same process basically from identifying and assessing and then introducing those methods. It can certainly be a bit more challenging from the psychosocial side, and that's where you need to be looking at how you're doing that. That consultation with staff is absolutely huge.
Mm-hmm.
Having an awareness of what the normal risk you'd see in your industry is really important as well. So we like to see the same model used in terms of you're doing that identification with your staff. You're looking at your data, you're looking at the information that's available, but then actually you need to be more sensitive as to how you're having those conversations, and you need to be active about how you're going to manage any barriers that might prevent issues being raised. So if there's issues with bullying from senior management, for example, that's a lot more complicated for a staff to raise that as an issue, when there could be repercussions.
Mm-hmm.
There are protections under the Work Health Safety Act for raising work health safety issues, and that does apply to the psychosocial side. But it's certainly a lot harder to say, look, I think the forklift's not working properly, as opposed to saying I'm not feeling safe in this environment because of the way you're treating me. So we need to be we need to get really skilled. We need to be getting our managers up to speed, and not ignoring issues. If you're getting something coming in and there's a grievance or a complaint, put that work health safety model around that to support that. So how do we manage the risks at the moment while we're looking into it? Don't just say we're looking into it and not manage the risks while that's happening. And if you're getting those outcomes, how do we, for example, reintroduce someone back into a team? How do we manage that side? So we really want to see that they go hand in hand. And we see a lot of businesses where they haven't actually put those things together. So you're getting data from workers' comp, you're getting data from sick leave, exit interviews, but they're not actually putting them in one bucket,
Yeah.
and saying, okay, what's the picture that we're actually getting here that we need to focus on?
I know, it's almost like those things are swept under the rug, and then it
Mm.
happens again, and then it happens again. And the cycle just continues, because we're looking at band-aiding the symptom and band-aiding, say, the people, rather than saying, right, why is this occurring? Instead of
Mm.
looking at a he said, she said, look at what is the overarching issue of why it's occurring. Is it workload? Is it vicarious trauma? Is there violence and aggression? What are their customers looking like and doing? Are they trained appropriately to be able to do that? The leadership part of it is so vital and huge, because if you can't create psychological safety in a team, you're never going to be able to get that information.
Mm.
But we should be looking at these not only holistically, like that is spot on, but we should be looking at them from the lens of it's an opportunity to say, look,
Exactly.
They're telling us there's an issue here. Where is the issue? How can we move these parts
Mm.
to make sure that these things don't continue to happen?
Exactly. You really got to take the lessons away, and you need to have that trauma-informed approach if that's applicable for those situations as well. And getting your managers skilled up is huge, but
Mm.
also recognizing if you've got someone that just doesn't have those people skills, that you've still got a way to support staff in that situation. So that might be one where they might identify and have those "are you okay" discussions, but then they might bring someone else in to help out. So it's really important to know where your weaknesses are and where your strengths might be as an organisation, and how you can actually support staff through those parts. So that's really
Yeah.
important, and that
And
just the development, that leadership, and not walking past something that you wouldn't accept.
yes.
Because if you do see that, and I always love to throw stories in, but there was one group I dealt with not long ago. They'd lodged a complaint with over 50 issues in there. There was a team with 10 people. They completely disregarded it. They didn't meet with anyone. They just sent them back something saying that all 50 elements had been dismissed,
Oh,
and
God.
that had some really serious health ramifications for those people. And on the other side of that, that was a team of 10 that ended up being a team of one.
Oh,
So people left, and that was, you really looked at missed opportunities, and that was a really easy example to go, we should have taken a different approach. We really should have been having that trauma informed, supporting people, and actually actively listening to them, as opposed to just throwing everything off to the side.
yeah. And that's a great example of organizational justice or injustice.
Hmm.
So if anyone's curious about that, that's exactly what that is.
That's very well covered in the code of practice. I'd wave my code of practice in front of you, but it's got writing all over it because I use it that often.
I'm with you. And I think you raise a good point as well. As managers and leaders, employers, HR, work health and safety, we feel like we need to do everything in that space. And being able to say, I'm not great at that, that's not my strength, is
Hmm.
totally okay. And being able to work to each other's strengths should be where we're leaning towards, even if it's not your particular role. How can you help out, and how can someone else help out with you? I know role clarity is also a psychosocial hazard, so I'm probably crossing the line here, but we should all be looking at it more holistically, and creating a psychologically safe environment helps when you work to your strengths and everyone knows that they can get supported, not by just the one person that they're told to go to, by multiple people in the organization.
Mm. Yeah, and that's really getting to the core with psychosocial hazard reporting. A lot of times it's really underreported. So you really got to look how we can actually remove those barriers that might be something that might be,
Mm.
stopping people from actually saying this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And not having that denial approach if things do come in that people are saying. And probably the biggest thing is also just not to accept it.
Yes.
So if you're working in a field where, if you're working in a mental health unit in a hospital, if you're a police, if you work in those sort of areas where violence is something that comes with the job,
Mm.
it's really important to keep that consultation, putting your systems in place, and going back and talking to people about, is this working? What can we do differently? And not just saying, well, it's just part of the job, because that means that you're sort of condoning it,
Yes.
and you're saying that people should just be putting up with it, and it sends a message that if you're not coping with it, there's something wrong with you, as opposed to something wrong with the situation. So
Yeah.
we really want to see that consultation is driven all the way through, and then there is those steps. We see a lot of situations that are really difficult situations to work in, but they've put a system in place 5 years ago. They haven't gone back to see whether it's working. People are working around it, as opposed to working with it. There's people not getting along with other people, which is the barrier in that. And without actually pulling it up and going, okay, how are we actually going with this? You really miss those points. And it's the same with the physical ones. I don't go out for serious incidents where there hasn't been an opportunity to prevent it from happening.
Yes. Exactly. And let's just pretend for a moment that people who are listening to this are perfect and they don't see any hazards. There's incredible data from the Australian Human Rights Commission, from Fair Work, from SafeWork Australia, that says these are the industries that are having issues and these are their particular issues.
Hmm.
So if you start there to say, right, even though we might be perfect, and we may not have these reports or complaints or claims. Let's look at it as if we are part of that industry, and these are the same issues and areas that our people are seeing wherever they go in that particular industry. So I always refer to those as a good start. But as you've said, exit interview data, surveys, feedback, rumors.
Yeah,
We often know what's going on, but we can't put our finger on it. Work with that as well.
yeah, 100%. I do a lot of talks, and I'll have a series of questions I'll put up at the start of it about, when we go through all this and what your obligations are, what the requirements are under the legislation, have a think about these questions.
Yeah.
Are there teams where you know, you're losing a lot of staff, and you can't get someone when you put an EOI out? No one wants to act in that team. Are you having trouble recruiting to it? Are the people taking sick leave? Look at those things, and a number of times you do that, and you can just see people nodding their head.
Mm.
Like it's time to get stuck into that and actually figure out what it is. If you've got people by their behaviours that are causing harm, or by the nature of the work, or
Mhm.
if the way the system is set up, because that's a really big driver, is how are you setting up a safe system of work? If we can get people focusing on that as the starting point when you're planning work, to actually be thinking about the psychosocial matters. If you're having trouble with recruitment, it's not enough just to say, well, we're recruiting. You have to manage those risks.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's only going to get worse for you and your company, and you're going to be hurting your workers. So we do go out to situations where people say that is their response. Well, what are you doing about these huge workload issues? Well, we're recruiting. But no, but what are you doing now?
Yeah.
Because you can hire those people, and then it might be 6 months or 3 months until they're up to speed as well. So you've got that effect as well.
Yeah.
And if that's happening, the odds are you're going to be losing more people out the door. So
Mm.
if you manage these things well, this makes your business so much stronger.
Yes.
So you're not getting staff turnover. You're not spending time on recruitment. You're not spending money on recruitment. You're not getting grievances and complaints that you're putting time towards. You're not losing productivity,
Mhm.
where people are turning up for work but they're not engaged.
Mhm.
There's just so many positives. You're not getting those, but they also contribute to physical incidents
Yeah.
as well. If you think about it, you're not. It doesn't even have to be work related. I'm talking about fitness for work. If you're turning up for work, you've had a really bad night's sleep. It could be that you're having issues at work, and that impacts on your sleep. Tends to reduce your exercise, alcohol consumption. Your eating tends to get worse. Um, if you're getting those sort of factors and you're turning up for work, you don't want to be operating machinery, for example. It makes you're more likely to have incidents. And it could also be that your football team lost on the weekend, or you're going through a divorce or something like that. So we're seeing some really good examples. There's one, I won't say the company, but a company around Port Macquarie, where I'm based, and they trained all their people leaders up, from supervisor up, and every Monday morning they noticed they were having a lot of issues with apprentices. So every Monday morning they check in with them individually. They have a policy that if you're not fit for work, for whatever, they don't ask what it is.
Mhm.
You put your hand up and they send you home.
Mm.
They don't want you doing that 5 times a week, but it's a no fault system. And that what the roll-on effects of that is, they're not getting any injuries and not getting any incidents. They're not losing their apprentices. They're
Mm.
actually doing their 3 to 4 years and actually staying on with the organisation. So if
Yeah.
you do these things well, there's such a really positive thing that you can get out of it. And if you do these things poorly, I won't mention the company, but one of my first companies I ever worked with, we had a boss that was just really difficult to work for. We had 20 staff and we lost 30 staff a year. That wasn't a great business model, and it wasn't a great way to treat people.
No.
So if you can fix those parts up, and really create an environment where people are comfortable raising issues,
Mhm.
we you said the right phrasing before. If you see that as an opportunity, if they're raising it, and you actively manage what risks and hazards are present, then it's a really good business model, and it's a really good way to treat people.
Yeah. That Monday morning thing, I'm working with a manufacturing client who does the same thing. And yeah, it works really well. It shows that they care, and yeah, it supports that physical and psychological health. So it's great that the news is getting out there about the different things that you can do. So um
Yeah, it's really
when you
important to get on that front foot. So, if you can do that and be proactive,
Mm.
then you can prevent harm. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, but that's a really good example of a good practice.
Yeah. So when you go out to an
Mm.
organization, what do you want to see? How can they make sure that they're meeting your expectations as a psychologically psychosocial inspector?
Yeah, but it's basically what we want is just that they're taking action to identify psychosocial hazards, and this is the most important part, in consultation with the workers.
Mm.
Again, we see some really good practices for this, but I've dealt with an organisation and they sent me across a policy on how they would respond to and identify these hazards. It said, we'll identify the hazards, we'll do a risk assessment to determine what the risk is and what's the likelihood, and then we'll put strategies in place. And then the next step was, then we'll consult with workers. Like that has to be front and centre, number one.
Yeah.
So we really want to see that proper consultation's occurring, and that you've got something in place to actively manage that, and you're going back to see whether it's working.
Mm.
So you can get the law of unintended consequences where it creates an issue in another area, or there can be areas for improvement. But if you don't go back and look at it for 10 years, you're going to have 10 years of poor practices that aren't working. So when you're putting something in place, to go back and talk to the people. So we really want to see that evidence of consultation, and we want to see that there's strategies in place to identify and manage psychosocial hazards. So there is a slight difference from the legislation for physical safety. This is really the only difference, in that you've got the hierarchy of needs where you go, try to eliminate and work your way down to PPE. In psychosocial hazards, it's actually easier. It's just, have we got a hazard? Can we eliminate it? If we can't, how do we minimise it from that side? So we want to see the evidence that that's happening.
Yeah.
And that consultation is so strong. We go out and we work with a lot of organisations, and they'll have every policy and procedure in place. And when you go talk to the workers, they've got no idea what it is, or it's not working.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that's happening from that side. So we really want to see that there's an actual system in place to manage the hazards that are there.
Yeah.
So they're probably the two big one to go from that side. As I said earlier, we don't want to see that risks are just accepted. That's just part of the job. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not good enough. It's not going to work for people. You're going to have people that are off on workers' compensation, sick leave. You're going to lose your workforce from that side. So it's really being proactive about how you can assist people through that, how you can try to prevent it, but then also how you respond to it. So we want to see that there's something in place from there that if you are getting a notification or something, or someone is raising an issue, that you're onto it.
Yeah. And the beauty of consulting with workers early is they often know what the problems are, but they also have the answers. They have proposed solutions as well. So it reduces the amount of effort, of work, of stress and anxiety trying to come up with all of these strategies. Working together means you're going to work on a solution that it works for everyone, but they're also empowered to be part of the solution as well.
And you get a workforce that's engaged, and you're less likely to lose them as well. So if you look at the classic example of something like workload, they'll have the ideas, your workers, about, like, they might have they've come from another workplace where they did something. They're TAFE students, and so they're learning what best practice is from TAFE. So I'm a big fan of consultation with people that are new to that workforce, whether that be new to the company or new to the industry as well, because it really helps to have someone's eyes that are fresh, that you can actually get the ideas from. So the ideas will come from workers. They'll say, look, why are we doing this? We don't need to do this. If we, at times, workload, it could be that there's better system mechanically that can make life better, but also that you're doing tasks that you don't need to do, or there's duplication. So what we've really seen across a lot of workplaces, if you can support, there's industries where you can't control what's coming through your door. A hospital's a typical situation, but what we're seeing is that the people leaders that actually actively talk to their staff and engage and put systems in place and keep checking on them and make them feel valued, they're not people that are losing staff. Like, they're the ones that are retaining them in situations where you are losing a lot of staff, not because it's the hospital system, but because of what's happening in the world at the moment, what's happened over the last couple of years. So having that sort of emotional intelligence and how you actively support and put systems in place can really help staff get through difficult situations healthy.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And look, you kind of have already done this, but do you have any more advice or tips for employers and managers when it comes to psychosocial safety? You've been sprinkling them throughout, but leave us with?
I did do myself a list. I'm just making sure we've gone through. Start from where you are. So if you're feeling like you haven't got a handle on this, then reach out for assistance. The code of practice is fantastic. The regulations provide sort of a step-by-step, the things that you should consider when you're doing a risk assessment, but there's a lot of free assistance and advice out, and there's some great consultants around the areas as well. So I'll pay that back to you.
Yeah.
We do provide free one-on-one training and mentoring for coaches through the Black Dog Institute. There's also, so there's coaching and training, so they're separate. They help you set up your systems around these issues. So there is that free advice. You can reach out to SafeWork. We do things that are called advisory visits, where an inspector comes out and helps you. It provides advice. I've got one of those in 2 weeks, where we're going out to a company who's saying, look, can you help us just with advice on how we might manage these risks? I've told them to go talk to their workers before I come as well, so they've got that information from them. There's also some really good tools to help you identify where your risk might be. So if you're sitting there going, oh my God, I don't know what I should be looking at, there's a couple of tools. One's called the Workplace Wellbeing Assessment Tool. So that's a system-based approach, surveying leaders and workers and then comparing the information between the two. So it looks at your systems from that side. And another one called People at Work tool. So I've seen both of these used really effectively. The People at Work tool, it's really good if you've got more than 20 people in your workplace. It's completely free. We don't get any of the information. It's a survey you send out to your staff. It goes through a lot of what the psychosocial hazards are that are in the code of practice. And if you've got more than 10 in a team, we'll actually give you data for that team as well. So what you get back at the end is a report that says, here are your risk areas. And hopefully there's none.
Yeah.
If we get that outcome, that's a really good outcome. It's like a traffic light system. So here are the areas that should be your main focus, that it's workload in this area or it's bullying in this area. I did this with an organisation several years back, and every single criteria was in the red light system. But at least they knew. We issued notices as we do in such circumstances. They went and did a lot of work, put a lot of time and effort into their leaders as well. We came back, we actually reran the tool, and everything had moved up into the green light apart from one area that was in the middle one. And they went away to keep working on that. But also, they also set review dates. So in 3 months, we're going back to make sure that everything we've implemented is working, that we're not doing the thing that is human nature where we go back and revert back to old behaviours, but we're continuing to make sure that this is something effective that's working. So there is a lot of free advice that's out there, a lot of resources you can access, and some really great people that can come in and help you set up your systems, help you out with training as well. Some of the training you were talking about before, Nicole, that's really good to hear that's out there.
Yes.
Having that awareness of both sides of a story, your own personal biases as well. I saw a really good training course the other day where they were talking about responding to complaints, particularly where you might have had a continuous complaints, and you can really get fatigued and annoyed with that, but instead recognizing your biases and following your systems through from that side. So it is such a big thing. As I said, that guide through 55 C and D in the work health safety regs, that's great because it actually says here are the things you should be considering. So again, these are things that can actually make it something that can look really hard, make it really doable. And there's all that extra assistance that's out there to help out from those sides as well.
Love it. Thank you so much, Peter. I'll actually share the links to those in the show notes as well. So if anyone's interested in finding out more about anything that you've just shared, they'll have easy access to those. Was there something else you wanted to say before we sign off?
I will just have a look at what information you've got as well.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to reinforce that point. And put it all together. So you still want to protect privacy, but if you are getting grievances, we had a job a while back where it was only a small team, but there was a couple of people that had grievances. There were a couple that had taken long-term sick leave, a couple that had taken workers' comp, and they were all dealt with by different departments that didn't talk to each other. So instead of going, hang on a tick, 80% of our workforce is having some sort of issue, they thought it was it was 20%. So try to pull that information, what you ought to know. So what is common to your industry, what your responsibilities are, make sure that you really understand what your responsibilities are in the legislation. It is to make sure it's a safe workplace. Don't look at it as too hard. Get stuck in and start talking to your staff and work from there.
Yes. Start where you're at, back at the start. I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for an incredible chat. It's been one of the most fun, so I appreciate that. But what's the best way for people to connect with SafeWork? And you're in SafeWork New South Wales. Obviously, there are other safety regulators around Australia.
They're clearly not as good as us, those. There's a lot of ways. We have our 131050 number.
Mhm.
So you can actually call and receive advice and information. So they do an incredible job. The people that work in these places, they know so much. There's not many questions that come to them that they can't answer off the bat and provide that information. Have a look at the resources that are out there and tap in from that side. We've got our SafeWork New South Wales website. We have the advisory visits I spoke about earlier. And around these efforts, we've got that work with Black Dog Institute, where there is that free coaching, there is the free training to help out for that. That is for companies that have less than 200 employees or are not for profit.
Mhm.
So that does cover a really high percentage of our workforces. And if you're in a company that's bigger than that, then you can still link in consultants. You can link in with Black Dog Institute, and they'll actually provide you with a quote from that side. We have our inspectors in the local offices that do an incredible job. And we also do a lot of presentations around the state as well. So I've just been going around the state doing them for HSRs.
Mhm.
And they've been really well attended. I think we've run 8 or 10 of those around the state. So it's been nice to drive around the state and catch up with old friends as well. So that's one of the benefits of the job.
Yes. And I'd recommend to subscribe to your e-newsletter because that's where you get a lot of that information as well. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate the conversation
You're
and
welcome.
for joining us.